Welcome to Defining Dad Bod, where my dad, Coach Alex VanHouten, posts his 14 years of experience to work for you. You should listen to him. Here's pretty beast mode. Who knows who we could be if we could become 1% better every single day.
Americans make up 5% of the world population, but yet we take in 65 to 70% of the world's pharmaceutical drugs. 80% of Americans are suffering with a chronic disease associated with poor lifestyle choices.
Please bring yourself.
If this is truly about health, then mandate healthy living, exercise, good food choices, chiropractic, outlaw tobacco and cigarettes, processed sugars. When is enough enough?
What's up, guys? This is Alex VanHouten with Defining Dad Bod. You're listening to Season 3, Episode 12 of Defining Dad Bod, where we're speaking to Dr. Ben Tapper. Dr. Tapper is who you just heard a clip from right after the intro. As I hope you can tell already, this is going to be a powerful and passionate conversation about our individual health and fitness in light of current events in the world, and about what sort of future we can work to build for ourselves and our communities following the monumental events of 2020. I do have to preface this entire conversation by saying there's some strong opinions shared here, and I would love your feedback and your thoughts. Shoot me a message at coachal@definingdadbod.com. Some housekeeping and food for thought before we get to the show. The Defining Dad Bod podcast is a listener-supported enterprise. Because of the problems that exist in the health and fitness world, this entire project has been funded by listeners just like you in order to pay for the research, the editing, the publishing, and the web presence of the content here on Defining Dad Bod. Our generous listeners are the reason that we can continue to bring new content to you every single week. And it's also the reason that, unlike many fitness institutions, we're not funded by large corporate entities that want you to buy their stuff. And so we can bring you the science and the practicality of what's going to be best for you in your household without worrying about making advertisers happy. If you haven't raised your hand in support of Defining Dad Bod yet, I encourage you to do so. We need your help to continue putting out great content and ensuring that it remains unbought and unbiased for the long haul. You can do so at definingdadbod.com/donate. Here you'll find an option for a one-time donation or a monthly donation through Patreon. Your support is appreciated because every dollar invested in Defining Dad Bod goes right back into the production of content and the publication of the podcast. And any overages each month are used to plan the expansion of content operations in the future. There are YouTube videos, courses, and improved social media content online that we'd love to be pouring some time and energy into. However, as a small business, it's hard to make ends meet producing free content, and so your support is greatly appreciated. Consider making a pledge at definingdadbod.com/donate. And if you're a listener who wants to get more involved in what we're up to, or see the resources that we've already put out, the best way to do that is to join our inner circle at definingdadbod.com/inner circle. Both men and women are welcome to join our online community as long as they're committed to becoming 1% better every single day and treating members of our community with respect. In the inner circle, we do things like the Faithful 40 Challenge and a monthly live Q&A to make the contents of this show practical to your everyday life. That's definingdadbod.com/inner circle. Now, with our housekeeping out of the way, here's your food for thought. A friend recommended the Netflix documentary Social Dilemma recently. And the thing about documentaries is I always take them with a grain of salt. In fact, I imagine if you're listening to the sound of my voice, you've probably heard of a recent documentary called Game Changers, which was a piece meant to skew many people toward the idea of adopting a vegan diet for themselves. The grain of salt approach in me is knowing that many documentaries are awesomely persuasive, and the point of doing a documentary is to present your biased opinion and the strongest argument you can make for why that opinion is correct and why people need to take action. So when my friend recommended the documentary, I grinned, agreed to watch it, but told him not to hold his breath. I'm not going to recap the entire documentary here. Perhaps I can get somebody from the documentary to come have a conversation with me about it. That would be fun. But my food for thought for you today is to open your phone and take a quick look at how much screen time you're getting in a day. The most common question or concern that I get about improving one's health and fitness is a feeling like you don't have much time. And one of the most eye-opening aspects of this documentary is the average amount of time that people are pouring into things like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, and so many other applications that are engineered to pull your time and attention away from you. I started thinking about how much healthier our food could be, or how much better shape our bodies could be in if we converted at least half of that time to feeding ourselves and our families well, and moving ourselves intelligently and effectively instead of mindlessly scrolling. Well, maybe it's not a problem for you, but I found that my average screen time in a day was somewhere between 2 and 3 hours on these applications. Granted, some of that was having meaningful conversations with clients that I'm helping to coach through difficult things. It was still eye-opening to me that there was room for improvement for myself. And in the context of defining dad bod, even more interesting to think that if I can't figure this out well, how do I think my kids are going to do when the time comes that they want to be involved in these things too? So how much screen time are you getting in a day? What applications are you regularly pouring your time and energy and focus into? Do you need to improve that? And what's your plan to do so? Or maybe you got this whole thing figured out, and I need to know some of your life hacks. Shoot me a message at coachal@definingdadbod.com. I'd love to hear your thoughts. That's our food for thought today. I hope it gives you something to munch on. And now, without further ado, let's get to my powerful conversation with Dr. Ben Tapper about the future of our individual health.
I'm extremely excited about our conversation today with Dr. Ben Tapper, my buddy from Omaha. How are you today, brother?
I'm doing great, Alex. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm killing it, actually. I just had an awesome chest workout, and I'm actually very blessed and grateful in that respect because I just came off of a rough back injury. So it feels good to be able to put some plates on the bar and bench it. Now, we're going to talk about some exercise and stuff today, but I want to give my listeners an opportunity to get to know you and your practice and what you do in the world. And so if you wouldn't mind, could you share your superhero origin story with us before we get into our conversation today?
Right. Well, I'm a chiropractor here in Omaha, Nebraska. I just specialize and focus on wellness, epigenetics, immunology, and health. I'm passionate about serving others. I feel like my purpose in life is to get people well, to encourage others, to give them hope where hope is needed, to convince others that you don't need to become your diagnosis, your situation, your circumstance, that you can be healthy if you give the body what it needs. And so my area of study, I'm just very passionate about just health in general in what I research. And so I'm just here in Omaha, Nebraska. We have a very thriving practice. I'm very blessed. I'm a dad of 4 wonderful kiddos. I'm happily married, and life is great, my friend. Life is good.
You shared an awesome video with me. It was actually toward the beginning of COVID, and you were I'm going to put the link in the show notes below so other people can enjoy it as well. But I have done something similar with my son, which is like, here are the dad bod moves, with your kids, use your kids as a weight. And this guy, I just got to say, like, picture this guy. He's got his, how old is this kid? Like a year old? Your youngest, I think?
Oh, yeah. So he's 2. He's 2. Yep.
Okay. So he's got his 2-year-old, right? And he's on the edge of it. And he's like, hey, look, these are like wall balls or wall slams. So in the video, he throws the kiddo up in the air, and then the video switches to a baby doll hitting the wall and falling down. And dude, I died. It was hilarious. So thank you for that. That was awesome.
We had an absolute blast making that video. And my buddy Rob Yannicki, I'm going to give him a shout out. He is an awesome guy, and he is a phenomenal, gifted videographer, and he's one of my best friends. I'm like, dude, we got to make this dad bod video. He was leaving to Oregon and moving there, and so I wanted one last hoorah video.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever seen our other videos we've made, but they're awesome, fun videos. I'm trying to get away from this typical, hey, you got neck pain, come and see me. Everybody and their brother does those kind of ads. I'm like, I'm going to do something completely different, just so off the wall crazy, just fun. I want to do this dad bod video. And then you sent me a message. I'm like, dude, you're going to love and appreciate this video. If anybody's going to love this video, you're the guy that's going to love this video.
Message from the Defining Dad Bod coach. Dude, I have a video for you. This is so good.
Yeah, totally. Right. Yep. So I was happy that you reached out, because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is perfect.
Well, and I appreciate that too, because when it comes to health and fitness, one of the things that we talk about around here is how important it is for it to be aligned with our family values. And, right. that arranging ourselves from a nutrition and exercise perspective, if that adds to our relationship with our kids, that's a powerful thing. But if it takes away from the relationship with our kids, then that's a negative thing. And that can be both, because you're trying to be too healthy or because you're not trying at all.
Right.
So I appreciated that video. I was like, man, I got a chiropractor buddy I've never met who gets it. That's amazing. So thank you.
Yes.
Now, one of the reasons that I wanted to bring you on today is I actually met you on social media by reaching out to say thank you for some remarks that you had to make in public, and there was a video going around. And I'm kind of ignorant of the context. What I saw was you standing in front of a group of people saying that, look, this COVID issue is a lot deeper than the mandates and some of the public health policy and stuff that seems to be surrounding what we're being told in public. And you had a lot of things to say that I personally have said on my show, have said in articles, and I was like, holy cow, there's another person in the world, but apparently you're shareable. I don't know if that's the beard or what, but people really latched on to what you had to say there. So can you help me paint this picture a little bit? Where were you when you had these things to say? And what was the context of this video that's going around? And then we can talk a little bit more about kind of the fallout and the message that you were hoping to get across and stuff. But I'm really curious about this. Can you paint that picture for us?
Yeah. So basically, we were one of the last cities, major cities, I should say. We're not, I don't consider Omaha a major city, but they said that we are one of the last major city to force a mask mandate. And I am a patriot, and patriots mean, being patriotic doesn't mean that you love the president or you love the government, but you love the country, you love the people. And I used to campaign for Ron Paul back in the day, and some people might not like that. Some people might think he's crazy, but it really opened my eyes to the whole corruption that's in our system and the deep state and everything. And so I'm I'm just very patriotic, and I just want to defend freedom at all costs. I have a ton of family members that fought for our freedoms. And, the biggest thing is with this mask mandate was coming our way, and I took time off my schedule because they had it was a city council meeting at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. I had a busy schedule, and I was told that I could speak at 2 p.m. And so, truth be told, I didn't get to speak till after 4 p.m.
Oh my gosh.
And so I had to cancel all my patients that afternoon. I didn't want to do that. And I told my office girl, just reschedule everybody. I'm going to take the rest of the night off. But I was down there at the city council, and they had the deck stacked in their favor. And if you were just there to observe, it was blatantly obvious. I don't care what side of the mask mandate you're on. If you were just there to observe, and you would realize how much corruption there was at that meeting. It was embarrassing. They had about 15 to 20 different docs, and they basically were just talking about, in my opinion, a lot of propaganda, a lot of misinformation, and it was so corrupt. And so you were not allowed to speak. In fact, there was a 6-year-old girl that spoke and was talking about how she's being bullied at the stores and how she's not, she doesn't like wearing the mask, and she wanted to speak. I know this little girl, she's actually a patient of mine. She's awesome. And I applauded for her.
Yeah.
Okay. I broke the rules. I applauded. There was another lady that applauded. I was actually instigating the applause, and the sheriff grabbed the other lady that was clapping and kicked her out of the room.
Whoa. For being disruptive, quote unquote?
Yeah. Just because there was no clapping, no applause.
Wow.
So that just really irked me. And I'm very passionate about what I speak about. And so if you want to wear a mask, I have no disrespect. I'm not going to disrespect you. Go ahead and wear a mask. But I think that, in my opinion, if you want to ask what I think about this is a tyrannical medical agenda being pushed on the people. And I quoted Benjamin Rush, who was a signer of the Declaration of Independence. He was a patriot. He said that if we don't put medical freedoms into our Constitution, the time will come when medicine forms an undercover dictatorship restricting the art of healing to one class of men. And that time is now. People, wake up. We need to understand that. The time is now. We need to band together. And so many people are so passive. They're complacent. They're comfortable. They don't want to be bothered by anything else. They don't want to fight. They just want to just go to go to work. They want to be left alone, and they want to be with their families. I totally get that, because that's what I want. I don't want to be into politics. I don't want to be the voice and be the front man here. Okay. But I just understand where we're going as a country, as a nation, as a world. And fear, my friend, is the fire that fuels the furnace of disease. We are pushing this fear mongering on the people. It is absolutely criminal. It is a spiritual warfare being pushed on the people. And God says, He didn't give us a spirit of fear. And I have patients that are bawling in my office with masks on. Why are you not wearing a mask? How are you not afraid? And I feel so bad for them. My heart truly breaks for these people because they're so fearful, so fearful. And so back to the city council, when I spoke from a place of love. I spoke from a place of conviction, a place from passion. And yes, it might have, if you are on the other side of the story, you probably thought I was an angry man. My mom actually was like, gosh, Ben, you're so angry. And I was like, Mom, you don't understand. was like, they're forcing this mask mandate, and I had to listen to 2 hours of propaganda before I could speak.
Well, so I watched it, and from the outside looking in, third party, you and I feel very similarly about many things, I can tell. But one of the things that I took away from that is, and I'm not just saying this because you and I are standing in front of each other, but I thought, look, obviously this guy that I don't know, my brother from another mother who I haven't shaken his hand yet, he's upset, he's frustrated.
Right.
But you kept your composure really well. And what I thought was really interesting is you were speaking kind of like you just did into the microphone. You're passionate, you were purposeful, you were assertive, but you weren't like boisterous or belligerent. And one of the city council members halfway through your video is like, hey, if you can compose yourself. It's like, whoa, wait a second. Just because my viewpoint, because like I paused the video at that point, I was like, I would have flipped my lid. Like, are you kidding me? I've been standing there forever. I'm saying this thing, like none of it's belligerent. You want to hear me yell? Like,
right.
I'll yell,
right.
But you just kept saying what you needed to say. It wasn't belligerent. Right. It wasn't boisterous. And I was like, hey man, like that's when I messaged you, by the way. I was like, well done, sir, because it was very masculine, very manly, very assertive, but it was also not, what's the word? There was just a beautiful balance that you struck in what you had to say. And I think that's why it's resonated with so many people is that, like, look, regardless of what you believe about the science of how this helps or not, mask mandates notwithstanding, regardless of what you believe about whether or not we should mandate, I don't know, vitamin D supplements, since that seems to lower hospitalizations, by the way, the vitamin D levels. A lot of people don't know that. But regardless of what you think about those things, when we get into a public forum to discuss ideas that as Americans, freedom of speech, I thought that you exemplified the way that should happen because it was assertive, it was well thought out, it was purposeful. I could tell you were pissed, but you didn't let that affect the way that you presented the themes that you're going for. So I just wanted to say, well, I've got you here. Thank you. And then I want to talk a little bit about some of the ideas that you presented in that city council conversation. So one of the things that my listeners have heard from me here at Defining Dad Bod, and one of the things that they've heard probably several times throughout this COVID pandemic, is that our underlying health has been deteriorating for a long time. And I don't mean like mine individually as a person, but collectively as a society, our underlying level of well-being has been deteriorating over time. Obesity levels are high, diabetes is high, people are on more medications for anxiety and depression than ever before. Our kids are being diagnosed with autism and ADHD and all kinds of things. Like we've been on a steady downhill slope for quite a while. And people like you and I have made it our business and our life's work to try to make a difference in that decline. And please correct me if I'm wrong there, but with a new virus like this that, hits the world, and people have been talking about the possibility of pandemics for a while. I'm a big fan of zombie movies, by the way, as an example. Like we've been talking about pandemics for a while. To me, all this has done is shine a spotlight on the degrading level of health that we've had as a nation, and that there is no mandate that's going to fix that at the level of individual choice. And so I wanted to have a conversation with you today, if possible, about what individual choices we might have currently as we stand up for our freedoms to, I don't know, go for a run without a mask on, for instance, or choose what supplements I'm going to take and what vaccines I do or don't let enter my child. As we do those things, we also have an individual choice in ourselves to manifest something that's harder to kill, pandemic or not, right? So I was curious about your thoughts on how those ideas are being tied together, because you stood in front of the city council very passionately to state your opinion. And one of the things you said was, if this is about health, then let's mandate X. And it had nothing to do with social distancing or masks or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, like let's mandate regular exercise. Let's I'm not saying everybody needs to be compelled to exercise. I don't know if that would work very well. But when you see the state of our nation and the state of the health of the people who come into your practice, what things are you seeing that could be addressed at the level of individual choice to maybe make a difference on the health side of things?
Well, first of all, I operate in the lenses of wellness and prevention. That is the model that you and I know all about. We understand that is the best model to get a patient or person well. They will never be healthy or well in a sickness and disease paradigm that has been so heavily monopolized. Now, there are genetic pathologies like Down syndrome or cystic fibrosis, where there's something wrong with the genetic blueprint, the genome of that cell. If you do not have a genetic type disorder or pathology, you have an epigenetic disease or disturbed condition. And the allopathic model is sick care. They try to change the environment to suit the weakened body. And you and I, we strengthen the body, right, to suit the environment. Now, what I talk about a lot is epigenetics. Basically, our level of health is the genetic expression on how we eat, how we move, and how we think. So it's very important that we understand that. I tell patients, what you do outside of here is the 95%. Okay, I'm the 5, maybe 10%. My job is the restoration and maintenance of the integrity of the nervous system. I make sure that the spine is moving. Movement is the main nutrient to every joint in the body. Movement in the spine alone provides 90% of the stimulation, nutrition to the nervous system, and the nervous system controls every cell, every tissue, every organ in the body. Our job is to optimize that as much as we can. And so when I tell patients that, they come in as a patient, they have this so-called disease, this name, because if we were to rewind that, a naming of a disease, a disturbed condition, it all starts with malfunction or dysfunction in the spine or anywhere in the body. Then that presents as a symptom, and that symptom will get a name. And so disease is not a thing or entity, but it's a disturbed condition. We need to understand that. If we understand that and wrap our mind around it, then we can be well. We're on the path to wellness. We just give the body what it needs. So I tell patients, hey, what I do, I'm focusing on strengthening the body by, putting motion and correcting the spine dysfunctions. We call that subluxations in the spine. We restore motion, restore function in the body, and then allowing the body to, the nervous system to be optimized. Does that correct everything? No, but it's a good start.
Yeah, well said. I appreciate that. So my listeners are very familiar with the idea of epigenetics, the idea that, I generally rant and rave on a soapbox about the idea of caloric intake and expenditure from exercise and nutrition perspective, because as my listeners know, what I care about is how does exercise applied as a stressor to your DNA? How does exercise unlock something better in you? And then how does your food help you allow that machinery that you've unlocked rebuild you to be stronger than you were before?
Right.
Because that's the name of the game. Energy expenditure is neither here nor there. If you got caught on fire today, we wouldn't go, oh, we just lost 100,000 calories to the atmosphere. Like, that stinks. We would be much more interested in you as an individual person that we've lost in the world, right? So that being said, when I talk about the problems in the system, I'll give you a story that you might appreciate. My 5-year-old came home 3 days ago, actually, at the time of this recording, but depending on when this comes out, it might be a little further in the past, but he came home with a Domino's fundraiser to sell to his friends and family to raise funds for the school. What's really interesting about that is Arkansas was the 7th most obese state in 2018. Currently, we are the 3rd most obese state in the US. So a year later, we're not doing much better. And that said, they've challenged my 5-year-old with toys and trinkets and stuff to sell pizza to a community that doesn't need any more pizza, right?
Right.
And like, he came home with that. My wife's a dietitian. I'm a master trainer and health coach. And I looked at that and I was like, no, like just no, like, you can't do that. Like, I'd rather just write the school a check if that's what you need, like, what happened to walkathons? Like, we got organic produce all around here we could sell to raise money for the school. Like, what is with Domino's? So when I hear about things like mask mandates, and then I see that, I'm like, we've lost our minds.
Right.
There's no way that those two things can coexist, because I would argue that if we feed our bodies well, then that mask isn't going to make much of a difference on that end of things, right?
Right.
Eat a pizza, wear a mask. Like, those two things don't make sense. So when you heard about the mask mandate, is it the frustration from a freedom perspective that got to you, or was it the health and fitness implications behind what you do with your patients? Which of the two was the primary impetus for you?
Phenomenal question. I love that question. So, dude, it's like 100% both. 100% yes on both of those questions. So, like, yes, from a patriotic, like, screw you guys, I'm not wearing a mask anywhere I go. Okay. And then you got, like, yes, from a health perspective, this has absolutely nothing to do with health. It's like, there's no guidelines to these masks. There's no like, hey, wear this kind of mask. Don't touch the mask. Stop putting that stinking mask on your face for 8 hours a day, then hanging it in the rearview mirror in the sun, and then putting it back on 7 days a week. I mean, how many bacterial type infections are we going to have? How many bladder infections are we going to have? I mean, it's like, seriously, this is a major issue. It has nothing to do with health. We have these infectious disease experts that don't understand the wellness and prevention paradigm. They don't really care about health. They just run from this issue. And the problem is they are taught that we're sick because of bad genes, bad germs, bad luck. And they don't realize that is all bad science. It's like, people. So yes, I mean, from both perspectives, I would say, when I get into the political side, I'm just as passionate. And when I look at the health side of things, I'm like, oh my gosh, we are missing the mark. This has nothing to do with health. And, exactly right. I go to the store. I want to take pictures of people's shopping carts to be like, look at this you're going to die from the Domino's thing. It's like, I look at all this garbage food in your grocery cart. I literally was so furious. Oh my God, change my heart for these people, because these people they're just lost. They don't understand. Because I saw a guy, literally, he could barely even walk around. I can hear him huffing and puffing underneath his mask. And in his shopping cart, dude, he had, like, I kid you not, probably 100 bottles of Pepsi. He had Doritos, chips, and some other processed garbage in his cart. And I'm just like, that guy is so fearful of Corona, but yet he doesn't realize the bigger killers: heart disease, obesity.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Diabetes. I'm like, dude, it's just like people, that's a problem. And, just like this, the CDC came out like last week that 95 or 96% of these people that are dying of so-called Corona, they're not dying from Corona. They're dying with 2.5 comorbidities. And that's the real killer. In my speech, in my talk, I said that. Right.
Yeah. Obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, influenza. Yeah, those were all in the comorbidities. And I'll put that link in the description for the show notes for anybody who wants to check those things out, because it's really fascinating numbers. Okay, we've heard that 130,000 people have died of coronavirus. It might interest you to know that 77,000 of those individuals also had either the flu or pneumonia.
It's huge.
And that's pretty powerful. And then also another study that's come out since the conversation you had with the town council was that vitamin D deficiency was the #1 indicator of whether or not you were going to be hospitalized with COVID, which is kind of crazy, because we've heard, that this tends to attack people who are elderly or have comorbid issues or whatever. But vitamin D deficiency, man, take off your shirt and go walk around outside for 20 minutes for a week, and then take some vitamin D supplements if that's not possible for you. It costs you $10 a month, right? That's not a huge problem to fix.
Right.
And that's not something we've heard about. We've heard mandates for masks to prevent the spread and stuff. And as somebody who's a practitioner in this realm, it's immensely frustrating to me to grow my family, to lead my community, to help, clients and whatnot get in better health for themselves. And then to hear, hey, we have to mandate these things that, given my experience with people, they're just not going to make that big of a difference comparatively. Walking through the grocery store, like you said, everybody's got a mask on, right? But your cart is full of DiGiorno, Pepsi, and candy bars. Like, it's not going to help you. These two things don't match.
Right. And that's the thing, you touch on a very important topic, vitamin D3. You mentioned influenza, pneumonia. That's something I talk about. We do, we put on vaccine seminars here, and we talk about, vaccines a lot. We do flu workshops. And, and people don't understand, if you go to the National Vital Statistics Reporting System for the CDC and you look at these numbers, you read through them. Now, on the surface, if you just kind of like, search and you find the surface and you find these numbers, it looks like influenza is a massive killer, right? But if you start digging deeper, getting into these numbers of the NVSS, like you start going and breaking these numbers down, they couple influenza with pneumonia. Okay, there's a bacterial and viral pneumonia. Now, pneumonia, to me, if you got pneumonia, that's scarier to me than influenza. Like, if my kids get the flu, I'm just like, whatever. But what the problem that concerns me is that pneumonia is a much bigger killer. In all pneumonia cases, and I've had studies with the vitamin D3 deficiency, all of these pneumonia cases and all the influenza cases, by the way, 90% of them, the deaths occur in the elderly, again, with comorbidities. Now, it's all tied to vitamin D3 deficiency. Unless we get 30 minutes of summer sunlight on large parts of our body, we will be deficient in vitamin D3, 100%. And, in the CDC, it's funny that they say, oh, you only need 400 IUs per day in an adult. And that is such a low estimate. And the Vitamin D3 Council says we need about 40 IUs per pound, and so that's the accurate number. And we need to be, and sometimes you might need more than that. And the vitamin D3, they're not all created equal, and so it does make a big big difference on the kind of D3 you're getting and consuming. And obviously sunlight is the best form of D3. We need that in our bodies. So yeah. But when you go to the doctor and get prescribed D3, what they'll do is say, oh, here's a 40,000 IU pill. Take that once a month. It's like, no, that's not the way to be taking that. That might be a lazy way of taking it. And it's convenient for the patient to just take one pill, and he's like, I'm getting my vitamin D. What that does is it can immensely spike your D3, but you need a daily dose of it. Your body, there's thousands of functions in your body that D3 is a cofactor for. So we need to supplement that D3. We need to, it's not even a vitamin. I can't stand we call it a vitamin.
It's actually a hormone.
Amen. It's a hormone. It's 100% a hormone. It's a neurotransmitter. We need to understand that. So what does a neurotransmitter do? It definitely plays a role in hormone regulation, nervous system functions, immune functions. If everybody supplemented with vitamin D3, there would be a decrease in cancer worldwide, 70%. Vitamin D3 supplementation is so important. And all diseases, epigenetic diseases, it all starts with toxicity and deficiency. We need to move away from that into purity and sufficiency. And we start with good supplementation. I'm sure you probably talk about good fats, good oils, good things like that. And we need D3 in our diet. So important.
100%. And I appreciate you saying that my listeners have heard me harp on D3 for a long time, especially in relation to testosterone, as you can imagine, defining dad bod.
Right.
But that said, one of the things I think, I had a really hard time with this. Like I literally in my small town, when masks were mandated in this area, I couldn't go grocery shopping. We've got one option, right? I couldn't go grocery shopping without adhering to this mask thing. So I told my wife, I was a little frustrated about this, obviously. And my child, my 5-year-old, knows how I feel about this and whatnot. And so I want to appear high integrity in his eyes as well. I want to do what I say and say what I do, right? So she was really sweet. She found a person who makes custom masks for me. And on the side, she had engraved, do your cardio, because she knows that my opinion is, look, if I'm going to wear this mask for you, then I'm going to need you to do a few things for me.
Amen, brother. Right.
It's not just my health and me not transmitting this thing around. I'm willing to do my part if that makes you feel better, but you need to do your part in taking care of your body. Do your cardio, keep yourself from, pneumonia being a killer for you, influenza, all the above, right? And it's not just because of COVID. It's like, hey, I'd love to see a decrease in hypertension. I'd love to see a decrease in high cholesterol. I'd love to see a decrease in all of the things that come from not getting enough exercise and feeding your body poorly, right? So in your mind, when you think of the future, let's say the world doesn't come to a catastrophic libertarian nightmare end with civil war and mandated vaccines and all of the above, and we look at the future, do you think that this is the wake-up call that the public needs to take some things in their lives more seriously with regard to health? Or do you think that this has been sufficiently distracting enough that nothing's going to change because of it? What are your thoughts on that? I would love to hear them.
Well, the thing I'm sensing is that we are at a crossroads. And when I see the state that we're in, I view an absolutely huge opportunity for true health, for a paradigm shift, especially with the information coming out about the CDC, all that stuff coming out. That is absolutely huge information to people. Like the biggest killer is poor lifestyle. That is the biggest killer. 80% of chronic illness and disease associated with poor lifestyle choice, and these deaths are no different. We need to understand that. So I pray for a huge paradigm shift because the time is now for that. And so if we do not have that shift, we're in trouble. We will go down that path of mandated vaccines and more separation, more government control, more government regulation. We have an immune system. We have a body that is self-healing, self-regulating. If we give that body what it needs, it can be well.
Well said. And something like COVID, it's not the only pandemic we're going to face in our lifetimes. I hope you and your children live a nice, long, happy life. And I hope the same for any of our listeners. But the idea of a global new virus or new bacterial colony or new fungicide or whatever, those things are going to happen in the future, period.
Right.
Like there's no doubt about it. This has been happening since the beginning of human evolution. Like it's been happening for a long time. That's why our microbiome and our virome are made of literally billions of different species that we've co-evolved with, right? So that said, we're going to face something like this in the future. And the call that I've been making to my audience and the call that I feel you're making is like, let's build our body up to handle that well. If you were to speak in that vein, I imagine it's something that your community hears from you a lot or that your patients hear from you a lot. What are your thoughts on how we can better do that for ourselves?
The biggest thing is we have to understand what health is, where health comes from. Like you said, there's always going to be a pandemic. There's always going to be an epidemic. But the problem is the pandemic and their epidemics, if you look at the numbers, it is absolutely 100% chronic disease. again, associated with poor lifestyle. We're told, like I said, that we're sick because of bad germs. Don't get me wrong, germs can cause a problem, but we have 10 times more bacteria and germs on and in the body than we do cells. There is a symbiotic relationship with the microscopic world. They do provide a benefit for us. And the gut you mentioned, like all the different bacterial strands in there. I mean, I was reading about the byproducts of these bacteria in the gut. And it's unbelievable. It'll blow your mind.
It's crazy.
It's absolutely crazy. I mean, they produce vitamin K2, serotonin's produced from the gut, all these different things. There's gut bacteria that's main function and role is to actually bind to metals and excrete it. Unbelievable. So when we think about when we drink chlorinated water, antibiotic, overprescription, all that stuff, that wipes out the microbiome, causes imbalances in there. So we need to understand and recognize where health comes from and not be fearful of germs and bacteria and over sanitize everything. But if we just understand those principles, understand that health comes from within, and then shift the paradigm into a wellness and prevention model, everything will change. It won't be such a fearful society that we live in. I see and envision a peaceful society. Right now, I feel like I'm in Nazi Germany. I had to go to Best Buy to grab an adapter for my microphone because I just bought a new Mac here to do this interview with you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't have the right adapter. So I had to go to Best Buy. And I walk in there, I didn't have a mask. And the lady like literally yelled at me because I didn't have a mask on. She goes, "Where's your mask?" And I'm like, I wanted to go, "Where's your swastika?" But I kept my cool. And I just kept my cool. And I just said, I'm not going to wear that. She was like, "You're not going to be allowed to shop in here." And I just said, "You know what? I have an exemption." That's the first time I said that. I don't like to say that, but I just said it. And she goes, "Well, that's all you had to say." And I was like, for crying out loud, lady, I feel like, nothing against Best Buy employees, but I'm like, it was just rude. And, I kept my composure. I just needed my thing. I got in and got out. But this is the world we're living in. People are so fearful and people are so, just disconnected to the true message of health.
I appreciate that. And I'd like to involve the listener in this call as well, because look, if you're not a doctor or you're not a trainer or you're not a dietitian, your health and fitness habits can also affect your family and your community. And so, if you're a guy driving to work right now and you decide, you know what, no more oven pizza at night, like we're going to eat some veggies and get some good protein in our system. I want my kids to join me for another walk around the block. I'm going to get outside and get my vitamin D. I'm going to do these things. I'm going to have a serious talk with my wife about how much alcohol I've been drinking, like whatever. Like you are a locus of that movement as well, because Dr. Tapper and I can do cardio till we turn blue in the face, or we can, adjust spines. I can't adjust spines. I won't even try, but we can adjust spines. That sort of thing makes every single person a responsible party in their own health and is contagious in a good way. And so I wanted to say that to the listener, but to you, I think one other topic I'd like to cover with you that I think is really interesting is, my show is not necessarily a political show. I tend to think of the journey of wellness or the journey of health as an apolitical topic, usually when there aren't mandates about how to get it done, right? But there's a dichotomy that's been bothering me, and I'd love to speak it here, and I'd love to get your thoughts on it. I read several studies on the effectiveness of masks and whatnot, especially those espoused by the CDC. One of the things that I thought was interesting was the idea of mask mandates until there's a vaccine available. And, me and my household, I believe we've already been exposed to COVID. And I also believe we've developed our immune system enough that it wasn't really that big of a deal. And I have, friends and family in my community who've tested positive and have been just fine and all those things. Not saying that that's not mortally dangerous for other people, but that has happened in my household. So my question was, why can't I just say, hey, I've already had it? Like, I don't need this mask. I'm not a danger to anybody. This is how, diseases have worked for hundreds of thousands of years. It's not that big of a deal. I've already had it. And the argument was, well, we're not sure if the antibodies stay around. You could be reinfectious. That could be a problem. And so it was like, we're just mandating masks across the board. And then the really interesting thing to me was like, well, what makes you think that a vaccine's going to do anybody any good then? Mask mandates until there's a vaccine. Well, has there ever, in the history of ever, been a vaccine that developed a better T-cell response, antibody response to a disease than my own body has? And it just hasn't been the case. So I would love your thoughts on that, because you spoke at the very beginning of this conversation about how fear is the driver of disease or diswellness, and how many people from a passive perspective are kind of just accepting this. And to me, that just seems like I don't know. I feel like I'm a pretty smart guy. I'm not the most intelligent man in the world, but I feel like this is a dichotomy that the population just can't swallow. So what are your thoughts on that? The idea of precautionary measures and social distancing until there's a vaccine present, when at the end of the day, it would just, seems to me, would be really great if every healthy person ever could just go ahead and get this thing, develop a T cell, and then we'd be in a good spot.
Okay, so we're going to go down this rabbit hole. Okay?
Why not? Let's do it together.
Right. So last year, the World Health Organization stated that the greatest threat to the world are, in fact, unvaccinated people or the people that refuse vaccination. Shortly thereafter, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, the ACIP, stated, you know what? We need to get a game plan together. They had a meeting. They said, we cannot force vaccinate the world, but we sure can force compliance. Okay. I thought that was pretty interesting because at that same time, there was draconian, tyrannical bills and legislation coming across the nation, eradicating our medical freedoms. And if you're not familiar with that, you need to look into it, like bills like SB 277 in California, SB 276, bills in New York, Virginia, all these other bills coming our way. They're still being implemented in legislation.
I raised a big stink about 2 years ago. Yeah, on my social media. I feel that.
And so I was like, oh my gosh, we need to gather the troops. I see this coming. We need to be proactive in this fight, not reactive. And so I had a meeting about 100 patients. We had a snowstorm the day of the meeting, which was kind of crazy. So we had only about 100 people there. And I said, listen, there's something big coming our way. This was, mind you, this was last October or November. I said, we need to gather the troops. We need to be proactive. There's something coming our way. I can't put my finger on it, but I sense something big is coming our way. I said, these bills are coming our way. They're trying to eradicate our medical freedoms. We need to be proactive. And dude, January, February, boom, Corona hits. I'm like, this is the Trojan horse to implement this legislation. Right. I was super skeptical of this coronavirus when it first came about. I was like, oh my gosh. And I remember I saw a news article in January or December, whenever Kobe Bryant died. I remember reading an article about coronavirus vaccines being tested. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's that about? As early as that, people don't realize that. They're implementing a vaccination trials here in Omaha, Nebraska. They're giving you $1,500 per trial. Okay. It's unbelievable. People are signing up for that. I digress. So now you have the ACIP all saying this. I listen to these other physicians. Everybody's talking about we have to wear these masks till there's a vaccine. We're not going back to normal till there's a vaccine. I have employers of good friends of mine that work at these big businesses, and they're saying nobody's coming back. We're doing remote learning till you get that vaccine. And they're going to leverage your employment. They're going to leverage driver's license, your insurance policies. They're already doing that with Medicare. Medicare's if you're not familiar with that, Medicare, if you don't get a flu vaccine, they don't pay as much. So what does that mean for people that are on Medicare, right? They don't have high incomes, they're over 65. And it's like, they're really like screwing the older people just by leveraging insurance and everything else by not paying for them unless you get a flu shot. They're so indoctrinated thinking that these flu vaccines are going to prevent the flu and everything else, and that these vaccines are going to save us. And the problem is that these vaccines will not save us. And, we put on vaccine seminars here in Omaha. We put them on throughout, and people they just don't understand because we're so indoctrinated that these vaccines are safe and effective, not realizing that they do cause massive issues. Again, I stated earlier in this conversation that my job is the restoration and maintenance of the integrity of the nervous system. And I take a lot of pride in that. I put a lot of study in the nervous system. I understand pathology of the nervous system and disease and disturbed conditions in the nervous system. That's my whole purpose, is to understand disturbed conditions in the nervous system. And polio, people say, well, what about polio? When they ask about vaccinations, they have no idea about polio and they don't even understand it. But that is an absolute disturbed condition in the nervous system. And it's not a virus. It's actually inflammatory agents in the spine. Polio means gray. Why does it mean gray? It's because it's attacking inflammatory processes of the gray matter of the spinal cord. The anterior horn of the spinal cord will send sensory information, motor neurons to the legs. That's why we called it infantile paralysis back in the day. But if you look at arsenic poisoning and the history of pesticide usage back in the day, you would notice and see that there is a direct correlation there with Paris Green. There's a phenomenal book out there called The Moth and the Iron Lung. I highly recommend that book for anybody that's listening. It's a phenomenal book that talks about the history. It's very well done, very well written, and it'll give you a history of the poliomyelitis. It's a phenomenal read. I encourage listeners. But yeah, I didn't mean to go down that topic, but their whole agenda is absolutely to force vaccine mandates, 100%. That's why I'm so adamantly against this mass mandate, because I understand that this is going to lead into a vaccine mandate very quickly and very easily.
And it concerns me that there are many people who would be really happy about that train. Like, hey, there's a vaccine available. Let's do it. It's mandatory. And I know plenty of people who would be like, yep, sign me up. Let's do it. Let's get that done. Minus what's the average like length of time to determine whether or not a vaccine is actually helpful and safe and well tested? It's like 3 or 4 years, is it not? Usually?
It's 7 years.
Wow.
Usually 7 years, and they're rushing this vaccine, and obviously it's different technology, but we have animal coronavirus vaccines. We've had them for cows. Coronaviruses they've been around. And from all the literature that I've ever read about coronaviruses prior to 2020, it's all just respiratory type conditions. And, it's so funny to me that 2020, if you ask the layperson what coronavirus is, they wouldn't even know it existed prior to 2020. Even COVID-19, such a specific strain of COVID-19, that's very suspicious to me because something so specific. And as a physician, you come in, why didn't they just get diagnosed with influenza or something like that, or just a common cold or something? But influenza, there's a difference between obviously colds and influenza, and the fever is a big difference there. But the thing that I am so suspicious about is like, I just imagine a patient walking into a clinic and they're like, oh, yep, you got COVID-19. How did you figure that out? Did you just have a test laying around for COVID-19? Because, I guarantee you that these doctors didn't just have a COVID-19 test laying around, right? I mean, because you see what I'm saying? Do you follow me? It's like, where did that come from? And that's when I looked into the testing and I'm like, oh my gosh, this antibody testing for Corona is so manipulated. It's just a farce.
So there was one company that proliferated coronavirus testing, and then the article didn't actually have much publicity, which is really interesting, but it had a 3% false positive testing rate. And what's interesting is a lot of people don't understand statistics enough to know what that actually means. What that actually means is 1 to 2 in 50 cases that were positive might have actually had the virus, which is really interesting because that would mean, let's say 50 people go get the test and they all, tested positive. Then from a false positive perspective, the way the statistics work out, there were only 2 of those people who were probably positive, and the other 48 people were false positive. And that's an amazing number that a lot of people don't understand, right? So like people are talking about the testing numbers going up, but if you watch things like fatalities and whatnot, we're getting better at treating whatever the fallout is, plus the comorbidities and stuff from an allopathic perspective. Perhaps there are communities of people who are developing better immunities to this sort of thing. This is not from a testing perspective. The numbers look scary, but the numbers aren't the only thing that we as people should be paying attention to. Right. So, there's a lot of things. There are people smarter than me in the world that are commenting on both sides of this process. But one of the things that I think is extremely important is the idea that no matter what goes on in the world, as for me and my house, there are things that we can do that are positive and powerful for us in our health and our community. And I appreciate the call to action saying, hey, this is our time. I want to know what's next for you, because I know your video's gone kind of viral. I've seen a lot of people commenting on things that you do. You've been a public figure for health for as long as you have been in practice and have cared to, take advantage of your videographer friend who's really good at videos, by the way. So what's next for you? Is this a thing local to Omaha? Is this something that, I don't see any like anti-mask riots coming up anytime soon. I'm not saying that you and I want to lead those, but the point is like, what do you see as the next step in the direction of somebody who's interested in making a difference from a positive perspective here?
Well, something that I've been working on for the last 6 years is a nonprofit organization. We're starting, and it's funny because I felt like I lost motivation when I started this organization. I was going to try to combat chronic illness in the business and yada, 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 and kind of give this paradigm shift in the company, because obviously presenteeism and absenteeism is due to chronic disease, chronic illness, associated with poor lifestyle. I'm like, oh man, this would be awesome. And I lost steam with it. I was going against other companies that were much larger, and I just felt like I was the underdog. I'm just some little chiropractor in Omaha, Nebraska. I just felt, just kind of beating myself up. Well, as of lately, I felt like I reinstated the purpose of this nonprofit. And I'm like, what I want to do is gather like-minded individuals. I believe that it will make a big difference. Even though I feel like it's like David and Goliath here, I feel like we are going to be world changers. And I feel like that video has given us a platform to reach people, and we're riding that wave, man. We're going to just keep pushing, and we're going to be just like a lighthouse. We're going to be a light in the darkness. We're going to stand our ground in the midst of the storms. We're going to be unwavering, and we're going to hold our ground. Because obviously we got a lot of attacks. I'm getting so many messages of people that are trying to attack me or try to discredit me. But you know what? For every negative, there's 1,000 positive. And we need to understand that people are starving for our message. People are begging for it. Our family deserves it, and the people are starving for it. We need to understand that.
I really appreciate you. And I want to say that, I think it's worth saying that even before COVID, even before this stuff broke in January, February, March, and people's IRAs started taking a dive and people started losing their jobs and mask mandates and all that stuff, this message, as you say, of health and owning yourself in a way that can be positive and powerful and hopeful, the science of epigenetics, the science of nutrition, the science of exercise, none of that's changed. It's been the same story for the last however long we've been here. Taking good care of your body, moving well, manifesting your best, feeding your best, fueling and building a good, positive and powerful you. That's not changed. And not only that, but it, regardless of whether or not you're susceptible to a pandemic virus, you as a person can manifest better individually, better in your family, better in your community, if you're standing on the solid foundation of wellness. Right. And so I want to say that because, some people might see what you're doing and what you said in front of the city council as some kind of like backlash to everything that's happening in the COVID world. And in a way that enticed you to speak up in front of a city council. But what you've been saying about health and what you've been saying about improving the lives of your patients, that hasn't changed. It's the same message. And suddenly people need to hear it more than ever before. Would you agree with that?
100%. We are living in times where, it's normal to be sick. It's normal to have a chronic disease. 50% of our children are suffering with a chronic disease. 80% of Americans have a chronic disease. It's like, when is enough enough? And why are these people so sick? And what is required to get and stay well? It's like, we need to understand that, I just think of that saying, like a healthy man has 1,000 dreams and wishes, right?
It's a good one.
But a sick man has one. You know what I mean? We need to value our health, and our level of health is the genetic expression of our lifestyle choices, and our health is on a continuum. We're either moving towards health and wellness or sickness and disease. The problem is we're taught that we are just sick because of bad luck or bad germs or bad genes. So there's nothing that we can do to be healthy, and that's bad science. But we need to understand that, like you said, like what we're preaching, what we need to do is just educate and encourage these people just to make healthier choices. Zig Ziglar said, you don't have to be great to start. You just got to start to be great. It just starts with making the choice, the decision in between your two ears. I'm going to make some healthier choices. I'm going to get, maybe I'm not going to drink soda today. Just those one things. I don't want to punish you and say you can never have ice cream or have that. Because you know what? I eat ice cream every once in a while, but I try, it's a special occasion food. I grew up in a household where we had ice cream after every meal. And there's a reason why my mom and dad were both type 2 diabetics. My grandma was a type 2 diabetic. It's like, and she died of cancer. It's, because they didn't understand that, Hippocrates said, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And we're eating nutritionally bankrupt foods. And, and it just starts by making a choice. I'm going to decide to make a better choice today. I'm going to do better. And if you fall, get back up again, man. If you fall 7, rise 8, it all starts with a choice,
Well said. I appreciate that. I often say on the show, if you're not dead, you're not done, and don't practice what you don't want to become.
Right. Never underestimate your potential to inspire others, encourage others in your family. We are leaders in our households, and to encourage our kids, because we're building up them to, we're going to pass the baton onto them. And I love the quote, you never know how far reaching something you may think, say, or do today will affect the lives of millions tomorrow. And that is 100% true. And I know that to be true because of that stinking video. I had no idea that video was going to go viral. And I spoke down there, and my wife looked at me and she goes, you better know what you're getting yourself into, because see those cameras over there? That's all those news crews. And I had no idea that video would have gone across the world. It literally, I got a message probably an hour before I came on your show here from a guy in Croatia thanking me. He said, my video is going viral there.
Wow.
And it's the most bizarre thing. And I'm very humbled. I'm just like, I'm just a simple guy here. I didn't expect that. But the thing is, if I would have said all that stuff a year ago, it would have fallen on deaf ears.
Completely. 100%.
And what does that tell you about the times we're living in? The sickness and disease model is failing. They're working out of their scope of practice, and they're trying to force an allopathic model into a wellness and prevention one, and it will never work. I don't care how you shape it. I don't care how you word it. They're trying to force something that will never work, and it was never meant to work. There's a time and purpose for medicine and a time and place for surgery. Don't get me wrong. They're masters of crisis care, but it was never meant to operate in a wellness and prevention model. When I was a freshman in college, I got thrown from a truck at 80 miles an hour. I broke my back in 3 spots. I was in constant pain. The doctors told me I wasn't going to be able to live. I wasn't going to be able to play sports. I wasn't going to be able to do this and this and this and this. And they gave me a whole list of things I couldn't do. Sure sounds like today's world. Put on this mask, social distance, don't shake hands with people, be in a box. It's a very similar message. Don't do this and don't do that. and I became my diagnosis. I lived that way for 6 to 7 years of my life, constant pain. I was like a moth under the light every time I saw a fast food sign. Just pull in there. I wasn't even hungry. I was just bored. And I'd kill a large fry, hamburgers, and I have a large soda. I'm going to go on a little tangent. I do have McDonald's in my office that's 11 years old that I bought it 11 years ago, and it's not moldy, doesn't smell. I digress. But the thing is, I would live that way for 7 years. I was overweight. I was completely unhappy. I had the worst heartburn. I had low energy, the worst headaches. I was in constant pain. A good day for me was 6 out of 10 on a pain scale. Literally, I'd wake up and I was 9 out of 10 pain every single day. And I just couldn't move. I was out of breath. I was out of shape. And I remember going to Dr. Burns in Illinois. He was a phenomenal chiropractic physician. And he x-rayed me. He said, "Man, you had quite the accident." I said, "Yes, I did." He adjusted right into those fractures, very specific adjustment. And it felt like he removed a steak knife out of my back. And I remember just going, oh my gosh. It's like I had a rock in my shoe for 7 years and he just removed it. And I didn't realize it was in there. And I got off that table and I'm like, "Can I start exercising? Can I start doing this stuff?" And he's like, "Yes." So I started exercising. I started moving. And I'm telling you, it changed my life. My heartburn went away. My energy levels got better. I started feeling better about myself. I got out of this slump of depression. I started, eating well, moving well, thinking well, and it changed my life. And so if you're listening, if you're in that situation, do not become your diagnosis. Don't become your situation. You can be well. You can be healthy. I know full well that is true 100%.
There really is no magic pill for the good life.
Right.
So, brother, it's been awesome talking to you here. I feel like I could talk to you for another couple hours, but we both got families to attend to and business and whatnot. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to have the last word. I feel like that was a great note to end on, but at the same time, as an interviewer, I still have some room to grow. So are there any questions I should have asked you that I didn't, that you feel would really cap off this information and interview well?
I felt like you asked some great questions, and I just want to thank you for allowing me to be a voice on your show. I really do greatly appreciate that, and I'm just humbled for the opportunity, so I thank you for that.
Brother, it has been a pleasure and awesome to get to know you via camera, so thank you. I appreciate what you're doing in the world, and I appreciate your time. To my listeners, you guys know what's coming. This has been Alex VanHouten with Defining Dad Bod. Until next time, guys, kick butt, take names.
The free, practical advice and conversations here remain unbought and unbiased thanks to the support of listeners just like you. If this episode's been helpful to you, please share it with somebody in your life who you know it will benefit. Then, subscribe to the podcast and leave us a raving review to tell others what value Defining Dad Bod has brought to your health and fitness journey. And finally, if you want more Defining Dad Bod, consider joining our online community. We send a lot of free perks and resources your way, and I, Coach Alex, go live every month to talk through our listeners' health and fitness questions to make the practical science of this show applicable to everyday life. Everyone's welcome, and we'd love to have you. For more information about joining the Inner Circle or becoming a supporter of the Defining Dad Bod podcast, go to definingdadbod.com/inner circle. That's definingdadbod.com/inner circle.